Joining us today, we have a full house, and having been in Dortmund, we have Ollie K as well as Jack Pitt-Brooke and also Tim Spiers as well. Ollie, you dropped a piece on The Athletic and the headline, England, a team of comebacks, late winners and finals. These are extraordinary times. Talk to me about what you thought about the game against the England won yesterday.
Well, they are extraordinary times. You look at England's inglorious history since 1966, and you know, they've been a team that would always fall short, often fall well short. If you look at the final tournament pre-Southgate, it was where they lost to Iceland in Euro 2016. It was absolutely grim. They never looked like a serious team at all at that tournament or the previous World Cup. And now, I mean, you look at this, you know, a team that had barely won a knockout game in decades, and you look at them now, and look, they've flirted with danger, they've flirted with calamity, embarrassment at times at this tournament. They've not hit great heights in terms of performance, but they keep digging it out and digging out these spectacular wins. The spectacular Bellingham equaliser against Slovakia in stoppage time, the late equaliser from Saka against Switzerland, and then winning on penalties, which again is something that England never used to do. And then to go through a game like that last night, where they seemed to have gained control after falling behind, and then they lost control, and we thought, oh, it's happening again with England. That last thing that they've been unable to do, which is when they lose control of big matches, and then they regain control. And the big criticism of Southgate about substitutions. Are his substitutions good enough? Well, you know, he brought on Ollie Watkins and Cole Palmer, and they combined for the winning goal in the, what was it, 1 second left on the clock before stoppage time. And it was just incredible. And it somehow felt right, being in the stadium, that it somehow felt right that they'd pulled it out of the bag again. And those scenes, the togetherness, the jubilation, delirium, it was just fantastic to witness.
Yeah, Jack, Ollie talks about the subs, and this is definitely something Gareth Southgate has come into criticism for in this tournament. I mean, it's fair to say, you know, England's second half wasn't probably as great as the first half, but those substitutions purely made a difference.
Yeah, huge difference. I thought the second half was not quite as bad as the second half against Switzerland, which was really bad, but similarly, you know, England lost control of the game in the second half. I thought it started to feel like any other massive game under Gareth Southgate. You know, like Croatia 2018 or Italy Euro 2020, or, you know, take your pick. But for him to change the game from the bench, having had, I mean, can you imagine the sense of vindication that Southgate must be feeling right now? Because for so long he's had, you know, people have made various criticisms of him, and one of them has been he doesn't make subs early enough, he doesn't make subs bravely enough. And yesterday he made what I thought were two incredibly brave subs. I know that the whole country was calling for Kane to come off, but it's still very brave to take off your captain and leading goal scorer. I mean, in Ollie's piece this morning, he compared it to the Cristiano Ronaldo situation with Portugal, where Roberto Martinez looks unable to take him off. And then to take off Foden, who'd been England's best player, I thought it was sensational in the first half. And then for those two guys who he brought on to combine to score the winning goal. I mean, it's such a riposte to that particular criticism of Southgate, and I think, you know, it must be true to say it's the most significant substitution in English football history.
Yeah. What would you say of the culture and I guess the mentality in which he's instilled within these players? Because yes, collectively perhaps they haven't played that greatly, but there are some serious moments of magic, as we've seen with Bellingham, we've seen with Saka, we've also yet again seen with Ollie Watkins, Jack.
Well, yeah, I think there's a few things. One is that the players never really look like they're beaten. I mean, that might just be they did look pretty beaten before the Bellingham goal against Slovakia, but their ability to stay patient and stick with a plan and find a way, even in difficult circumstances, that speaks very highly of the sort of culture and ethos they've got in the squad. And the other is, and this is something Southgate's really big on, is the way that the players who are not in the first 11 feel part of it, and they feel engaged and motivated and able to go and make a difference. And you can look at, you know, Palmer and Watkins combining for the goal, or you can look at the penalties the other day. You know, Tony, Palmer, Trent, all coming off the bench and scoring their penalties. So I think Southgate has worked so hard behind the scenes on how do we make sure that everybody feels a sense of agency and everybody feels part of the squad. And I think last night is testament to that.
And Tim, just moving on to Ollie Watkins, it's an interesting one, isn't it? This is a player in his, domestic career has had to bide his time, talk about being at Exeter, being in non-league teams, and then finally finding the light at Aston Villa yet again in this tournament, having to bide his time, coming up clutch when he's needed as well.
Yeah, Western-super-Mare as well. Don't forget Ayo, on loan 10 years ago. Yeah, and he spoke of his frustration last night and said, look, I've had the best season of my career, and he's barely kicked a ball. He got 20 minutes against Denmark. Said he's been very frustrated, and yeah, he did bide his time, and boy did he take his chance. I'm not just saying it sort of after the event, but I felt like he was the right man to come on, to be honest, to stretch the play, to do what Kane wasn't doing, and stick between the widths of the penalty box. And you've got to say Unai Emery's played a big part in that winning goal for England last night, because he's completely transformed Watkins' game. It's a great story, obviously for Watkins, but also for the EFL. You talk about his journey being at Exeter in 2017 and on to Brentford and on to Villa. He's not a kid. He's 28. He's really had to work to where he's got to. And also, I think an important point to make is that if UEFA hadn't decided 2 months ago, to go to 26-man squads instead of 23, Watkins might not even be here, to be honest. Either him or Tony surely would have been left out of a 23-man squad. You would have thought, and Tony's the one who's come on and set up the equaliser against Slovakia and scored his penalty, and then Watkins has come on here. It speaks to Southgate's use of his squad, but also, really important from an England point of view that they did have those 26 players, because they've used pretty much all of them.
Yeah, Ollie, is this the most convincing, I guess, particularly in that first half, you've seen England in this tournament so far?
Yeah, the first half was really good. I mean, the blow of conceding that early goal, what was it, 7 minutes, and it flew in from nowhere. Brilliant shot from Simons. But England's response to that was outstanding. Where you compare with the really sort of alarming, angst-ridden response against Slovakia to falling behind in that game. What was it, 10 days earlier, something like that. And this time it was a really mature, grown-up, composed, and technically impressive response. Their first half performance was really, really good. You look at, I could reel off all the players because they were all contributing well at that point. But Kobbie Mainoo at 19 years old was not dictating it in a way of a Tony Kroos or someone like that, but dictating, setting the rhythm of the game and recycling the ball constantly, always looking forward and always being perceptive and playing really well. Phil Foden, who's had a frustrating tournament at times, but had an absolutely mesmerising run at one point. A couple of long range efforts. He was playing fantastically well. He faded in the second half, but it was the first time really that I've been excited watching England at this tournament. And look, I'm not going to claim that they've played brilliantly over the course of the tournament. They haven't been. I don't think you could claim they've been one of the two most impressive tournament teams of the tournament so far. I think Germany could easily claim to have been more deserving of a place in the final, and they got knocked out in the quarters by coming up against Spain. But I do feel that England's first half performance last night, raised the bar considerably in terms of their efforts in this tournament, and probably hinted at the kind of standard they might have to reach. Well, I'm sure they will have to reach on Sunday in the final against Spain, because it's felt like they've improved gradually as the tournament's gone on. They've done just enough, you could say, to get through. But yeah, Spain on Sunday will be a different test entirely.
I think for a lot of this Euros, England's selections and tactics have looked a bit confused. Like Southgate had kind of lost sight of what made his team so effective in the past. But I actually think last night in the first half was the first time that it really clicked. Like, it kind of made sense that this slightly unusual team with Foden and Bellingham as two number 10s and then the two wing backs either side in possession, it really, you can kind of see what it's trying to do now. Like, England are playing with a bit more width. They're looking a lot more confident on the ball. They're finally getting the most of Foden, which is something that they've never done before, really. I thought last night, certainly the first hour of last night, was the best we've ever seen Foden play for England. And suddenly, a set of selections that did look a bit muddled maybe at the start of the tournament, you now get a sense of what Southgate's trying to do with it.
Let's be honest, that this is normally when they go out. You know, they trundle through the group stages, and then against the big team in the knockout stages, they finally produce what we've all been waiting for, and then they lose. That's what happens. That happened with France 2022. Back in the day, Germany 96 and Argentina 98, Germany 1990. It's the heroic defeat after a great performance, and it's sort of, we can do it next time. So, all right, the Dutch aren't comparable to the very best teams in this tournament, but still, this is the first sort of big nation they played, huge occasion, and yeah, they did it. They came through. I mean, we've got to say one thing which we might not talk about much in this pod, but if this was the Dutch version of the Athletic, then they would spend 30 minutes talking about the referee. So we've got to say, got really lucky. I mean, Ronald Koeman says VAR's breaking football after last night. Southgate might have been the same if it was the roles were reversed. Absolutely no guilt on our part whatsoever, because Lampard's goal was over the line and Maradona handled the ball. So we were due one, but we got lucky with the referee for sure. We've got to say that.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie, on that point, I mean, this is tournament football, right? I mean, this is sport in general. Luck does play a massive part in who goes on to either win it or get to the latter stages.
Yeah, and it's one thing to get a lucky break in a game, and it's another thing to ride your luck successfully and sort of roll with it, go with the punches type things. England in the past have been a team that might have felt unlucky and felt sorry for themselves, or they might have got a lucky break and then been so startled by it that they're kind of cowed into thinking, oh no, what do we do next? Southgate's England have ridden their luck at times. I absolutely agree with anybody that will say that, but they've shown the maturity and togetherness of a team that is probably going to get lucky more often because they've got a good attitude. They're together. They're united. They're defiant. And yeah, that's what happens. Being in the ground, I would imagine I've seen far fewer replays of that penalty incident than the rest of you and probably the rest of the population. But it's I felt in real time and upon watching the sort of first replay that might get given as a penalty, but that should never be a penalty. It wasn't one of those. It wasn't one of those sort of dangerous ones that you sometimes get after the ball's given. So you'd be livid if that was given against you, even if the rule book says technically it's a penalty. It didn't feel, in the spirit of the game, it didn't feel like it should be a penalty to me, at least. But on the minimal viewings, but it's it was 1-1 at that point. England went on to dominate the rest of the first half. Netherlands had the better of the second half. It was still in the balance, and you've got to roll with the punches, haven't you?
Yeah, Tim, I was listening to Ralph Honigstein on the Total Football Show, and he was talking about this England team. I think you were on the same podcast, actually. And he was saying, perhaps this team, hasn't come together as a collective per se, but it's the group of individuals that come up in those big moments. It's a harder way of winning a tournament, but it is definitely possible to win tournaments that way. This idea that these key players are seizing moments and coming away with a victory is so important in any sort of football. Yeah,
definitely. Especially the stage that they're at now. We've been calling for improvements in this team for the last few weeks, but all bets are off now. It doesn't matter how fluid you are in the final. You just got to win the thing, right? And they have proved time and again what you need in knockout football is those big moments from a variety of players as well. They're not just relying on one player to drag them through here. We all thought maybe after the first game it would have to be Bellingham And we all said in the lead-up, Bellingham will have to lead them to the final, or Kane will have to lead them to the final. Neither of those players have done that. To be fair, they're looking at Trent Alexander-Arnold with the winning penalty, and Tony coming on and making a difference, and Saka's goal, and now Ollie Watkins and Cole Palmer. These are not the obvious stars that we were all eulogising about before the tournament began. So yeah, no, you look at past winners. It's not, of course, it's not always the most fluid or best team. Portugal 2016, no. Italy 2020, no. Greece, obviously 2004, no. So yeah, the template has been set for how to win. This is part of the mentality Southgate's been building for 8 years now. Hasn't happened overnight. Doesn't happen overnight that they come up with these last minute moments and win penalty shootouts. This is what he's been working towards behind the scenes. So yes, they'll have to raise their level again for the final, but they've raised their level very clearly in each game in the knockout stages, from Slovakia, abysmal, to Switzerland, minimum level of where they should be at, and now the Dutch, obviously much better. So they'll need to do it again, but they can.
And just to Tim's point there, Southgate has studied in great detail these other teams who've won tournaments, specifically Portugal 2016, France 2018. He knows that it's not about getting all your best players on the pitch together. It's certainly not about playing the most exciting, attacking, aggressive football. It is about keeping clean sheets at a minimum, using the squad as far as you can, changing different formations, which is something that England have done this tournament, and also they did in the last Euros. And so Southgate has really taken on board this kind of playbook, I guess you could call it, on what makes a successful tournament team. And so he's very much kind of, I think, inspired by some of those examples Tim mentioned.
Yeah, one thing we haven't mentioned, Ollie, is Harry Kane, yet again, part of the discourse in this match. And I guess some might say, he had a better game than he has had in many of the others in the tournament. But with Ollie Watkins and Ivan Toney waiting in the wings and also showing impacts when they have come along, is there a conversation around, does he start in the next match in the final? I mean, it's hard to not see Harry Kane start a final for England in a major tournament, surely.
Yeah, I think it could be a conversation, but I don't think it would be a very long conversation in terms of should he start. I think he should start. I think he had a really good first half last night, and as well as scoring a penalty, which sets him as the all-time record goal scorer in European Championship history in knockout games, which is six goals in knockout games. That tells you he's not just somebody who goes shrinking away on the big occasions. He's if there was a chance knocking around the penalty area again on Sunday evening, he's the one you'd want it to fall to. And I think what Southgate has done really well, and what Kane has accepted really quite impressively at this tournament, is the fact that he's often played sort of 70, 80 minutes and then been subbed. And it's not easy to, as we said at the start, it's not easy to sub your captain and best player. And some managers have struggled with that. Some previous England managers have struggled with, have kept a tiring, flagging Rooney or Beckham or whatever on the pitch when it's been really obvious that their legs have gone and they've got nothing more in the tank. But Southgate, I think he's got the balance right. He's kept him. He's shown total faith in him, but he's known when Kane looks spent, which has been what 70 odd minutes last night, and we were probably all saying, "Look, come on, let's make a change now," and he did, and it paid off absolutely spectacularly. It doesn't mean you should always start with whatever works from the bench. I think you can be a very, very good, you can do a very, very good important job for 70 minutes, and then the person who comes on for the closing stage, it's a different assignment at that point.
I think that's been one of the big successes actually of this particular campaign, has been the very sort of clear-eyed way that Southgate has used Kane. Like, it's kind of amazing really that England, that Kane should not be on the pitch for the end of this game. Even in the Switzerland game, obviously they took Kane off, and then when they were doing the huddle before the penalty before the penalty shootout against Switzerland. Kane wasn't part of it because they had the huddle was only Southgate, the coaches, and the first 11, and so Kane, and during the actual penalties, Kane was on the sidelines with the rest of the players who'd either been subbed off or not subbed on. And that must be, I mean, on one level, basically, you couldn't imagine Cristiano Ronaldo doing that. Basically, you couldn't imagine Ronaldo accepting not being part of the biggest moments. But I think it feels to me from the outside as if Kane has really accepted the fact that, you know, he's not always going to be on the pitch all the time, and yet he can still make a big. You know, he can still contribute a lot when he is, and then he can still contribute to the group when he's not playing. I mean, we all saw how the way that he ran over to Watkins after Watkins' goal last night, ran onto the pitch to give him a big hug. So I think Southgate has managed this situation really, really well.
Ollie, for this one, and actually I'd be interested to get all your perspectives on this if you've got something, is that, you know, look, England constantly face criticism coming into all these tournaments, right? Yet you see a manager that's taken this team to European finals, World Cup semi-final and a quarter-final. Who could do a better job than Southgate's done in terms of reshaping a mentality of a squad, in terms of connecting the media and the players? Do you know what I mean? It's almost statesman-like.
Yeah, I think if you look at the job as a whole over an 8-year period, I think it's absolutely fantastic body of work when you consider where England were, when you consider what he's changed in terms of the whole culture around the team, the mood around the team, the spirit within the squad. Everything. England in the past might have a decent tournament every now and then, but there was never really any sort of continuity of vision, continuity of outlook, anything like that. Southgate has done all of that. I accept that I would agree with anyone who questions how good a manager is he. Where would he, or how would he do if he took a mid-table Premier League club? How would he do if he took a top Premier League club? I mean, I've got my doubts, frankly, but I think in terms of an England manager, in my time watching England, 40 plus years, 42 years, I've seen so many managers come and go, a lot of them with immensely better CVs in club football than Southgate probably will ever have. Bobby Robson and Fabio Capello, Sven-Göran Eriksson, etc. But I've never seen anyone who's done a better job as England manager. It's a different discipline, a different challenge, and he just seems to get everything. And yes, we can all say, oh, what about the tactics in this game? What about substitutions or lack of them in that game? I think he's even answered those questions in this tournament. I think he's done an incredible job, and I will stay the same whether they win or lose on Sunday.
He's been incredibly malleable, even throughout the tournament, more than any England manager I can remember. You know, we've all got gripes when we watch the England team. Like I said earlier, it's always rubbish in the group stages, right? And you're like, right, he's got to do this and he's got to do this. Well, he's done it. He's changed the formation. He came into the tournament saying we're never going to play three at the back. We're not even trained at three at the back. And he's changed formation halfway through the tournament. And again, so many managers who've been in a job for so long, whether it's international or club level, they have their favourites and they can never see past that. Well, the amount of favourites he's ditched is remarkable, really. You know, you look at Sterling a year ago. Mount was a massive favourite in the last Euros. He was ditched. Rashford, Henderson being the massive one. He's made these big, Maguire. I guess partly with his injury, but all these favourites that have been ditched ruthlessly, really ruthlessly. If he was if he was Trapattoni, we'd be so wow, it's an incredibly ruthless manager, and yet we just portray him as this nice, lovely man, which of course he is, but he's got that streak to him, and I think you can question him in terms of a coach, and I've been critical of him throughout this tournament, and I think rightly so, really. And he's never going to be that sort of sharp, top-level tactical mind. But as a manager, as Ollie says, and with his communication, his man management, his sort of positive reinforcement, his due diligence. It's exceptional at this level. So yeah, I think all tributes that are coming his way are extremely well earned.
There was one other thing I was just going to mention in terms of the tactics. I mean, he was getting panned for that, and the big criticism was you've got Bellingham and Foden occupying the same space. They're too close together, and his response to that, with the formation change, has been to put them even closer together, effectively in central, in both of them in central areas rather than one on the left, one in the middle. He's had them closer together, and it's worked. And you had more of them in those tight areas in the middle of the pitch. They've probably gone with less width than in the previous games, but it's worked because they've had that outlet. They've had those outlets, Saka and sometimes Trippier, sometimes Shaw in the second half last night. So I think that takes a certain fortitude as well from the manager. There have been times when England managers have just almost done what the media are asking for, the public are asking for, which is mad. I'm a journalist. I would stick up for journalists, but wouldn't want them picking the England team. Wouldn't want us picking the England team. It's you've got to have a clear sense of what you're doing, and Southgate has always had that.
That's why I think one of the things that's kind of surprised me about how this campaign has gone is that clearly Southgate has decided to go in a different direction this tournament. He's ripped up, as Tim was saying earlier, like he's kind of dropped half the team from Qatar. So all those players that we saw in Qatar, I think we all thought would be here at this Euros, and he's only really taken half of that team, especially players who played unbelievably well for him over the years. Rashford, Sterling, Maguire, Henderson, Mount, Phillips, etc. And he's gone in a different direction, and he's clearly decided to build the team around Foden, Bellingham, Saka, this younger generation of players. And for a long time I didn't think it was going to work, and certainly after the group stages or in the Slovakia game, I thought this is nuts. Like, what he should have put in. I thought he should build a time machine, go back to March 2023, and not drop Raheem Sterling. Get Sterling back on board, because England need a player like him. If it's not him, they need Bowen, who could maybe do that sort of Sterling role. And they need to kind of get back to the sort of true principles of Gazball, which Southgate has betrayed. And yet, this kind of new sort of Gazball 2.0 or whatever has actually turned out to be, in the end, it's got England where they want to get to. Like, it's turned out to be more effective, and it's with a different set of strengths, I think. And you can tell the players have got this real conviction about how they go about things now. And I never thought that his gamble would pay off, but in fact, it is paying off.
Yeah, Tim, his tactical skill has always been questioned, but do you think it's helped England to go behind in each of those knockout games rather than sort of sit back and invite pressure? They've actually had to be the one that applies the pressure and find a little something extra in their game.
Yeah, maybe. I guess if you look at the Serbia games and the Serbia game and the Denmark game, it didn't seem to suit them going ahead. They suddenly went very deep and conceded a lot of possession. And they've got a lot of weaknesses. Minutes 45 to 75 have been awful for all three knockout games. I don't think they've had a shot on target in that period in any of the three knockout games. They seem to come out in the second half and go within themselves, and then we wait as long as we can bear for Southgate to make a substitution. And do you know what? He was still a little bit late last night, I thought. And they were probably a little bit lucky that, the Dutch had already sort of made their big change with Weghorst coming on at half time, and obviously in the first half as well when they made their early change. So, look, full credit to the subs he made. But yeah, in terms of the game state, it needs to go a certain way in the final, I think, if England are going to win this. I do not want to see them, like in the Euro 2020 final, take a second-minute lead. I think that would be potentially disastrous. It would be awful for the game as well. But yeah, like we've all said, he's learned over that 8 years, Southgate, and I feel like he's still learning in this tournament, and he's evolving and learning more about this squad and its capabilities, as it goes on as well.
Yeah, Ollie, Southgate spoke about that, unusual environment after that draw with Slovenia. look back at that moment now, how would you describe that moment now? It seems quite a long time ago now that, those cuts were being thrown onto the field. But also I sort of think as well, what does it say about this guy that he's able to absorb that kind of pressure and still maintain a level head and get his team to where they need to get to?
Yeah, and the criticism and the abuse would have been much worse had Bellingham not pulled that out of the bag against Slovakia. I think that they were on a real precipice there, and also almost over the edge of the precipice. That goal seems to have changed everything. At the time of the quarter final against Switzerland, that mood had changed a bit, become a lot more upbeat among the fans, the media, definitely within the squad as well. But yeah, Southgate has remained level-headed throughout. It's that I think people find it infuriating. Some people find it infuriating that they just think he's just so he's just so level-headed, boring. You never see him get angry. You never see him do this. Too respectful, too polite. I think that mindset he has. I mean, it's the opposite of Jose Mourinho, isn't it? Or someone, or Diego Simeone, or someone like that. But he's for the job he's doing. For that position of England manager, but also for the type of England manager he has wanted to be, and for the type of team he's wanted to have: humble, together, focused, undaunted by things. I think his mentality and his attitude is fantastic. And he is passionate. You see him at the end of those big moments, and he really lets it out, and it's really great to see. It's go back to the Sweden game, or Colombia and Sweden games in 2018, and the Denmark game in 2021, and the celebrations last night and against Switzerland the other night they are the celebrations of someone who cares more deeply than absolutely anyone. But he manages to sort of keep a lid on it a lot of the time, and I think that's important.
I think that the kind of the level-headedness that Ollie's talking about there is amazing. Like, if you think about that Slovakia game, Southgate was about 1 minute away from his own personal Iceland. Like, England were that close to what would have been such an awful, upsetting defeat, and he would have had to go. And he never really betrayed that sense on the touchline that day. And then in the press conference afterwards, he put on an incredibly brave face, and never, he kind of he spoke as if it was always all in the plan. And he didn't come in and say, I was terrified, I was going to quit, I was, I pre-planned my resignation statement. And of course he's not going to say that, but I imagine on some level he must have been feeling it. And yet his ability to kind of stay on an emotional level through what must be like unbelievable kind of roller coasters of ups and downs all the time in the full glare of the media and the public eye is a really special skill. I don't think that it would work. This project wouldn't work otherwise.
And he also resists the temptation to sort of have a go back at his critic. There were journalists from other countries in the press conference. I think there was a German journalist and a Danish journalist after the Switzerland game, and saying, they were really kind of scathing of the football England had played to reach the semi-finals. And look, we've been scathing at times because when the performances have not been good enough. But he's very respectful in the way he sort of defends himself and defends his team. There's no real arrogance or ego in the way he does it. It's very respectful. I mean, I can think of an awful lot of managers who would be an awful lot less respectful and a lot less dignified in that situation.
Yeah, let's finish on this one, and it's a very simple question. I'm throwing it out to everyone. Tim, please go first. How on earth do England beat Spain?
Blimey. Well, they've got to raise their levels again. They have to. We've got to say, right, the Dutch were probably the least organised team they've played so far. I think they really struggled against deep line defences in previous matches, and the Dutch didn't do themselves justice. And England probably should be in the final. The run they've had, the path they've had to Berlin has been pretty favourable. Let's be honest. So to go and beat Spain now, And let's not forget, when they faced a top team in the last two tournaments, i.e. Italy in the final or France in Qatar, they have come up just short. So they're going to have to raise their levels significantly with, and more importantly, without the ball. If they're going to have to try and control this game without the ball. And if it's 1-1 at half-time again, or 0-0 at half-time again, and they have this big lull in the second half like they always do, Spain will probably win the game in that period. So, and then Spain have got this incredible record in finals, which Colin Miller keeps tweeting about. I think it's 22 finals for club and country against non-Spanish opposition that they've won in a row. But do you know what? They've got momentum. They've got belief. I think they've started to really believe in themselves. They're finding a way to win games. They've arguably got as many match winners in their ranks as Spain have. And they're peaking at the right time. So, yeah, it's coming home.
Yeah, I mean, Southgate was asked the same question last night, and he said, "Well, we're going to have to get the ball off them for a start." That you can see this being a very different game in that England will go long periods without possession. That hasn't been the case at this tournament. They've dominated possession in nearly every game. It might suit them a bit to be without the ball at times and to be able to play on the counter attack as long as they can use it sensibly when they have it. And I think Declan Rice, Kobbie Mainoo, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, they've got players who are very good in those tight spaces. They've got Saka going forward, and it's. I would say Spain are favourites based on performance level, everything we've seen so far in the tournament, but not dramatically so. I don't think it's an incredible Spain team. I don't think it was an incredible Italy team that beat England in Euro 2020 either. To me, there hasn't been a sensational team in this tournament. There often isn't. So I don't think you need to have. Well, it probably does in some ways need to be the performance of their lives to win on Sundays, but it doesn't have to be a performance that's like off the scale compared to anything they've produced at their clubs. It won't be the best. It won't have to be the best team performance Phil Foden's played in, for example, or Jude Bellingham. I just think they need to just be sensible, measured, keep Spain's numerous danger men quiet, and be effective and efficient when they win the ball. It doesn't have to be 10 out of 10. It just has to be a lot better and better than Spain on the day.
Sensible and measured, Jack. I mean, that is English football to a T, surely, from Ollie. What are your thoughts? How on earth did they beat Spain, who are showing two insane wingers and actually an attacking potency? I think that's probably been the best out of any team in this competition.
Yeah, I think Yamal and Williams have been basically the two best players in the tournament, even ahead of, Gakpo, who's been really good as well, but those two have been so good. And yeah, they're going to take some stopping, obviously. I think it's not an especially, there's there's experience in the spine of the Spain team, but there's a lot of very young players out there as well. I think maybe, clearly England are going to have to work hard without the ball. They're going to have to be very physical. But I think that, I'd certainly make Spain favourites, but I think England have got a reasonable chance. They're just going to have to, not get anyone sent off, not make any mistakes, try and stop Spain from turning possession into chances, and take their opportunity. There will be moments when England get ahead in the game, will get a bit of momentum, and they've got to be absolutely ruthless when that comes about.
All right, fantastic. We all wait to see who takes the finals of the Euro competition. Ollie, Jack, Tim, thanks so much for your time. And if you're after more from the Euros, remember to check out the Totally Football Show, and also our daily football briefing brings you all the news from both the Euros and Copa America in just 10 minutes throughout the summer. We'll be back here tomorrow for another deep dive into one of the day's biggest stories. Thanks for listening. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.